All right, pastors and Bible study leaders, are you ready? Get ready, because this deep dive is for you. We're going deep on James 1:19.
Oh yeah, a verse you know like the back of your hand, right?
You know it, but we're going way past the surface level here.
Derp.
Think of it this way. We're eavesdropping on pastors, swapping stories, the kind of stuff that gets you excited.
The stuff that makes you say, aha, giving you fresh ideas for your sermons, illustrations you can actually use.
Exactly, and trust me, we're not wading through the usual Christian platitudes today.
No way. What's so cool about the sermons we looked at? It's wild how different they are.
All based on James 1:19.
Yep, we've got humility, the power of words, even sermons connecting it back to eternal judgment.
It's amazing what pastors have managed to pull out of just this one little verse.
I know, it's like they squeezed every drop of insight out of it. And you know, something we saw a lot.
What's that?
Sermons really hammering home the point that words, they have power.
Yeah, but it wasn't just a vague, be careful what you say kind of thing.
No, not at all. One pastor, he used this analogy that just hits you. He compared words to a playground bully.
Ooh, I like that.
You know how we tell kids, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me?
Yeah, we all say that.
But let's be real, we all know that's not true. Words leave scars.
Absolutely. And that analogy, it really hits hard.
It cuts right through all the fluff and gets to why this verse is so important. Makes you think all the ways, big and small,
Right.
all the ways our words can hurt others.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
But there's a flip side, right? Words, they can also heal, amazingly heal.
They can.
One sermon we saw, it told this amazing story about a pastor. He used his radio show after a local tragedy
Oh, wow.
just to send out messages of hope and support. No fancy theology, just simple words of comfort.
Yeah.
And it made a huge difference to the people in that community.
I bet.
Yeah.
Seeing that contrast, the power to hurt and heal, laid out like that, it makes you think James isn't just giving us tips on being a good person, He's talking about something way deeper,
Deeper, for sure.
about human nature, that
Yeah.
that ability we have to wound or to heal with our words.
Powerful stuff. And that's where the familiar part comes in, right? Be quick to listen, slow to speak. The James 1:19 classic.
You know it. But what impressed me was how these pastors went beyond the typical listen more, talk less.
Yeah, they didn't stop there.
They really dug into why it's so hard, why it's so important.
They did.
We all know we should listen more, right? But these sermons gave practical, engaging ways to think about why we don't.
Yeah, they really made you think.
And one I really like to use this fishing analogy.
Oh, the fishing one.
Yeah, the pastor talked about if you're too quick to set the hook when you're fishing.
Too eager.
Yeah, you miss the catch.
You do?
You got to let the fish take the bait, feel that tug, and then you reel it in.
You got it. And he said it's the same with people.
Ah, I see it.
If we jump in with our own thoughts before we really hear them out, we miss that genuine connection.
I love that illustration. Even if you've never fished a day in your life, it works. It makes you think about how often we're just, waiting for our turn to talk
Waiting to jump in.
instead of truly listening.
Exactly, like we're just waiting to set the hook in the conversation.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that.
Oh, we all are. Another sermon, it took a totally different approach. This one compared the Bible to a condensed book,
Okay, interesting.
where every single word matters, every word's packed with meaning.
Right.
And the pastor, he challenged his congregation. He asked if they were giving that same level of attention to other people's words.
So are we reading people as deeply as we read Scripture?
That's the question.
Wow, that's a good one. Makes you think about how often we just skim the surface in conversations.
We do. We miss all the nuances, the emotions behind the words, the deeper meaning.
It's like we're skipping whole chapters.
Exactly. Now, what really surprised me was how some pastors, they brought in ideas from unexpected places. Like, who would think to use Dale Carnegie in a sermon on James 1:19?
How to win friends and influence people. That's a curveball.
Right. But when you think about it, it fits perfectly. Carnegie's whole philosophy,
It's about understanding others, valuing them.
which is at the heart of being a good listener.
It's true. It reminds us that these aren't just Christian principles.
No, they're universal. They work across all sorts of beliefs and ideas. And sometimes hearing it in a new way, that's what makes it click.
It can. Now, speaking of new ways to frame things, one pastor told this hilarious story about an older couple at a fast food restaurant.
Oh no, what happened?
Classic miscommunication. The husband thought she wanted a cheeseburger, but she really wanted chicken nuggets.
Oh dear.
Chaos. Pure chaos. It was funny, but it also perfectly illustrated how easily we misunderstand each other when we don't really listen.
That's the kind of story that sticks with you. It's funny, it's relatable, but it makes a serious point.
It does. I bet people were double-checking their spouse's orders after that sermon.
I bet they were. But these pastors, they didn't just use modern examples. Some of them went way back. They looked at the historical context of James 1:19.
And that changes things, doesn't it?
It really does. One sermon pointed out that James, he was writing to persecuted Christians.
Wow, yeah.
So when he says slow to anger, think about that context.
It gets real.
It gets very real. These weren't people debating theology in their comfy chairs.
No.
They were facing real danger, real hardship.
So this wasn't just theoretical advice.
Not at all. This was about survival, their ability to control their anger. That could be life or death.
Powerful. And it reminds us that the Bible, it wasn't written in a vacuum.
It wasn't. It was written by real people.
To real people.
Facing real challenges. And when you understand that, the words, they just jump off the page.
They do. And then there's that whole discussion about Gehenna.
Oh, yeah. The word often translated as hell.
Right. One pastor explained that Gehenna was a literal burning garbage dump.
Hold on. A what?
Outside Jerusalem.
A burning garbage dump. Now that's an image.
It is. And it makes that warning about fiery speech so much more vivid.
It does. He's not talking about some abstract punishment in the afterlife.
Right.
He's talking about something his audience saw every day, smelled every day.
Imagine that stench. The smoke. The constant burning.
Wow. It's a lot different than the traditional fire and brimstone imagery.
It is. And it makes you think. Our words, they can create that kind of destructive environment.
In our relationships.
Our families.
Our communities.
So we've got playground bullies, fish on the hook, Dale Carnegie, fast food fiascos, and a burning garbage dump. It's amazing.
It is. These pastors, they found so many different ways to make this verse come alive.
It shows you can find inspiration anywhere if you're looking for it.
You can. But the real magic happens when you go deeper, past those practical tips and into the theology.
That's where it gets really interesting.
It does. We go from good advice to, well, life-changing transformation.
Exactly. So let's dive into that next. What are some of the theological depths these sermons uncovered?
One sermon, it really stood out. It focused on humility.
Humility?
Yeah, as the key to controlling our anger. And it wasn't just about, behaving better.
Right.
It was about a change in our hearts, recognizing who we are before God.
Letting go of the ego.
Exactly. So I'm curious, how did that pastor connect humility with listening?
That's a good question.
Because he argued that to really listen, we have to put aside our own ideas and try to see things from the other person's point of view.
That's hard.
It is. And that kind of empathy, it only comes from humility.
You got to realize you don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
It's easy to listen when you already agree with someone.
Sure.
But to listen to someone you disagree with.
That's tough.
And really try to understand them.
That takes humility.
It does.
And that's the real challenge, isn't it?
It is.
To listen not just with our ears, but with our hearts. Another sermon, it made this connection between our speech and our relationship with God.
Interesting.
It argued that every word we say, it reflects our spiritual state, not just our social skills.
That's a powerful thought.
It is. It's not just about being a good communicator.
Right.
It's about reflecting God's image in everything we say.
Whoa. That raises the stakes. So we've talked a lot about theory.
We have.
Let's get practical.
Yeah.
Imagine you're a pastor prepping a sermon on James 1:19. What are some illustrations, some memorable ones that you could use
Ooh, good question.
to really bring this verse to life for your congregation?
One that really hit me was the mirror analogy.
I want that one.
The pastor, he talked about how God's word, it shows us who we really are. Like a mirror shows us our face.
Right.
So when we read James 1:19, it's like holding up a mirror to our hearts.
You see what needs to change.
Exactly.
It's not about judging others.
Yeah.
It's about looking at ourselves.
Yeah. Our motives, our attitudes. And speaking of self-reflection, there was this powerful illustration. It used the story of John Wesley.
The founder of Methodism.
Yeah, the guy was known for his fiery preaching.
Right.
But he struggled with his temper.
He did. You know, it's comforting to know that even the great spiritual leaders, they're human.
They are.
They struggle with the same things we do.
They do.
It makes James 1:19 feel more relatable, you know?
It does. Like, okay, if John Wesley could work on this, maybe I can too.
Exactly.
What other illustrations ready to go for sermons did you like?
Well, one pastor, He used this image. He talked about words being like seeds.
Seeds.
Yes, seeds that we plant. Some seeds, they grow beautiful flowers.
Right.
Others, they grow thorns and weeds. It's a reminder, our words have consequences.
They do.
They can nurture, or they can cause pain.
So powerful.
I love that one. And then there's that simple one, 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Oh, classic.
It's a visual, right?
It is.
We're meant to listen more than we speak. Sometimes the most obvious illustrations are the most powerful
I agree.
because they cut straight to the point. I also love the sermon that compared anger to a runaway horse.
Oh, that's a good one.
If you don't control it, it takes you places you don't want to go.
And causes damage along the way.
Exactly. That image, it works across cultures, across time. Everyone gets it. The power of something wild and untamed. And speaking of images that make you think, whoa, I need to pay attention, one pastor, he compared listening to mining for gold.
Mining for gold.
Yeah, you got to dig deep, sift through dirt and rock to find the treasure. But it's worth it.
That's fantastic. It shows how much patience and effort it takes to truly understand.
It does.
It's not always easy to get past the surface, to grasp what someone's really saying.
Right.
Sometimes you got to get your hands dirty to find the gold.
So we've gone from seeds to runaway horses to gold mines. You've given our listeners a whole toolkit of illustrations for James going 19.
I hope so.
It's a great starting point for anyone working on a sermon about this verse.
It is. But remember, illustrations, they're just tools.
Right.
They help us see the truth. But they're not the truth themselves.
That's a good point. Don't get so focused on finding the perfect illustration that you miss the main message of James 1:19.
Yeah.
It's about the power of our words,
About humility.
about really listening. These truths, they matter just as much today as they did 2,000 years ago.
Absolutely. And in our world, so loud and divided, that call to listen, to be slow to speak and slow to anger.
It's more important than ever.
It is.
So you've got the tools.
You do?
Go build something amazing.
Build something amazing.
What was your biggest takeaway from this deep dive? How would you use these insights in your own ministry?
It's hard to pick just one, but I think what really struck me was the link between our words and our relationship with God.
Yeah.
It makes you think. Everything we say, everything we do, it should reflect his love.
That's powerful. It's not just about talking better. It's about reflecting God's heart. And for our listeners out there, here's something to think about. If James were writing this letter today, what modern Gehenna would he use
Ooh.
to show the destructive power of words?
That's a good one. Think about how much impact our words have now
Yeah.
with social media. Online communication.
What's our version of that burning garbage dump,
Where can our words create a toxic environment?
where they spread like wildfire?
It's a challenge for all of us. How can we bring healing and peace?
In a world so full of anger and division, how can we build bridges with our words instead of walls?
It's a challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity because
Right.
when we get this right, when we really live out James 1:19, it can change everything.
Imagine if everyone took this verse to heart.
I know.
How different our families, our communities, our world would be.
It's a radical idea.
It is, but it's also full of hope.
It is. It reminds us we have a choice. We can use our words to tear down,
Or build up.
spread negativity.
Or offer hope.
And that choice, it all starts with listening.
Really listening.
Not just waiting to talk,
Right.
but really trying to understand the other person, even when you disagree.
That's tough. It takes humility, doesn't it?
It does. Being willing to say, maybe I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
Maybe I can learn something from someone who sees things differently.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
recognizing that we all have blind spots.
We do.
And sometimes the best thing we can do is just be there
Be present.
and listen with an open heart.
Open heart. And then when we do speak, to choose our words carefully.
With kindness.
Thoughtfulness.
A desire to build bridges, not walls.
It's not easy, but as we've seen, it's possible.
It is. And it's inspiring to see so many pastors finding creative ways to teach this. It gives me hope that maybe we can change things.
Turn the tide.
Yeah. Move toward a culture of more thoughtful, more compassionate communication.
There are so many amazing people out there living out this message.
There are.
People using their words to heal, to encourage,
To challenge injustice.
to spread hope.
It reminds us this verse isn't just about avoiding arguments or being polite.
It's not. It's about something bigger.
Reflecting God's love.
In everything we say, everything we do.
And that love, It's powerful stuff. It can change hearts. It can break down walls. It can bring light to the darkest places.
It can. So, to all our listeners out there, let's be those lights. Let's
Yes.
be the people who listen with empathy, who speak with
Who
grace.
choose love over anger, peace over division.
The world needs that, now more than ever. And as followers of Christ, we're called to show that love in our words and our actions.
It's a challenging calling, but it's also incredibly rewarding. And as we've seen in this deep dive into James 1:19, it's full of possibilities.
So keep diving deep, keep exploring, keep looking for those truths that can change your life and your ministry.
And until next time, keep listening, keep speaking, and keep loving.